For nearly a decade since Season 1 of One Punch Man, Lord Boros, the Dominator of the universe, has reigned supreme as the uncontested second strongest character in the anime. However, recently a new challenger has emerged, the mighty king of monsters, Lord Orochi. These two have been compared many times throughout the years, with the authors of the story giving both of them the same threat level of dragon or higher, and even the very opening of Season 3 painting the Monster King as the next big opponent for Saitama after Boros. But does the strongest monster on Earth actually have what it takes to dethrone the Dominator of the universe? Or does Boros retain his crown as the second strongest after the One Punch Man himself? Today, me and Yacine will analyze both of these juggernauts and discover which one would come out on top if they somehow came to blows.
The Monster Association has a goal, and it's not exactly easy. They wanted to overthrow humanity and rule the entire world. Very ambitious and one might say extremely delusional. To even entertain that kind of dream, you need more than just strength. You need a symbol, a force so terrifying, so far beyond any dragon level threat that its very presence would shatter the hero's will to fight. So they didn't just find a monster, they had to build one. Forged in countless experiments and near-death experiences, they simply shaped a being meant to stand above all others, the Monster King Orochi. Now, way before seeing anything remarkable done by the monster, the authors were constantly hyping him up to being the next big threat, possibly a monster that stands above the Dominator of the universe, saying things like Orochi is not going to get one shot by Saitama, it is uncertain if Tatsumaki can beat him, being constantly compared to the webcomic's strongest monster, and revealing that he's not just a normal dragon. He's in fact classified as dragon or higher, something that he shares with Boros. But moving to the manga itself, the Monster Association consists of over 500 monsters, among which are 10 dragon level executives. To rein in and lead a group as chaotic as this requires insane power that no one could doubt or oppose, and Lord Orochi serves as that invincible leader, placed on a pedestal far above each and every single one of his subordinates numerous times in the story.
Goketsu and Gyoro both consider him to be the strongest monster on the planet and the ultimate life form. Overgrown Rover submits to his might, and Orochi is still searching for his worthy sacrifice despite having all of the dragon-level cadres right there on a silver platter. In fact, it takes Saitama beating 3 of the strongest executives with ease for him to be considered worthy fodder for the king. Gyoro is confident the heroes would need a weapon greater than the combined might of all of the S-Class to pose a threat. This would include King, who at this point is believed to have killed Elder Centipede, one of the strongest cadres, in a single attack, and Gyoro views herself as the only one of all the cadres capable of taking down Tatsumaki, then gets bodied because she underestimated the Esper, and even after recognizing her miscalculations, still believes Orochi should have no trouble with her. All of these avenues place Orochi entire tiers above the cadres, with a debatable exception of Platinum S since he isn't a factor at this point in the story. And the crazy part is that all of this is in reference to Orochi when he's donning a mask and specifically hiding his true strength, to the point that when he comes back as literal mush, most likely nowhere near his full power, Psychos is astonished by his strength and cannot believe he was hiding it all this time. What further supports this is the fact that Mush Orochi does better against Tatsumaki than Psychos did. All of this would imply that Mush Orochi is actually stronger than his masked form was, showing just how ludicrously the Monster King was nerfing himself. And even in that state, he was considered above the cadres by multiple tiers, painting the idea that Orochi, even when hiding his true power, is by far the best even among the best.
But enough chit-chats and statements made by the authors and characters, it's time to see if after talking the talk, Orochi can walk the walk. To get a sense of what the king is like when going all out, we have 2 versions of Orochi versus Saitama to look into. At the time of making this video, me and Satori don't know for certain which version of Orochi the anime is going to eventually adapt. But given the anime's tendency to adapt retcon manga material, and since the opening shows the pre-retcon version of Orochi and the wall carvings that only exist in the canon version, the general belief is that they are going to mix between the two. So we're going to be scaling Orochi based on the assumption that both versions are merged into one, giving him feats from both chapters. So here's the crucial takeaway from their first clash. It's very important to note that Saitama has zero hesitation to kill Orochi. He certainly sees him purely as a monster to be erased and literally announces it plainly, brutally claiming that he will give Orochi a normal beating and finish him off off with one single punch. Now the insane part is, Orochi doesn't just react to Saitama's attack, he actually counters. He visibly, on panel, catches him and holds his advance with some dragons. And when Saitama charges towards him again, Orochi still manages to dodge. Take a moment and think about this for a second. Saitama actually wants to end this fight and Orochi is keeping up. On top of these crazy feats, Orochi displays a mentality very similar to Boros, as he actually gets excited for the battle of the strongest versus the strongest, which is a similar language used for Boros versus Saitama in the anime Blu-ray guide. However, Saitama after kicks it up a notch and straight up blitzes Orochi to the point where the latter had to ask what happened.
Now, if we assume that Orochi doesn't take that punch in the anime and goes deep underground for the sacrifice shenanigans, then all that is left to talk about is the Gaia Canon, which is Orochi's ultimate strongest attack. What he essentially does is he absorbs a large quantity of energy from the planet's core, consumes it and contains it in his body before shooting it outward at Saitama. This attack has insanely large scale compared to most things we see in the verse, and to show how overpowered the Gaia Cannon is, it actually stalemated Saitama's serious squirt gun, as the stream didn't actually reach Orochi, it just cancelled out the cannon. However, the Baldy did ultimately one-shot the Monster King casually to discipline him, implying he wasn't serious and didn't acknowledge Orochi's strength at all, even more so than in the retcon version. However, it is very important to understand that even though this encounter doesn't look very impressive, this is the same case of almost everyone who faces Saitama, and Orochi at the end of the day did live up to the hype. He showcased he's stronger than any other monster on Earth, was able to survive 2 exchanges with Saitama where the Baldy was certainly trying to kill him, and that is completely insane. The monster can regenerate, has crazy destructive attacks, crazy versatility, and has the synapses to keep up with casual Saitama and the power to halt his advances and counterattack. So, when all is said and done, Lord Orochi remains an extremely powerful combatant that few characters can ever hope to face and come out alive, let alone victorious. But is Boros one of those few who can conquer the King of Monsters?
What happens when an unstoppable force spends decades, perhaps centuries, searching for an immovable object? What drives a being who has everything, power, status, an empire, and possibly immortality, to seek out a foe that can potentially take all of this away? The simple answer is insufferable, all-encompassing boredom, a desperate search for meaning in a universe that can't provide purpose, as nothing really matters in life if one is living without excitement. This is exactly what defines Lord Boros, an alien that lives the same tragedy as the protagonist of the series, suffering from success so strong that everything becomes boring. Now switch your perspective to what we knew prior to his arrival. Saitama is the one punch man, the one hero that can defeat any character in one single punch. It doesn't matter how large, evolved, revered you are as a monster, you aren't surviving a single hit from Saitama. Literally the premise of the show. And here comes Lord Boros, who defied what the series is all about, surviving not one, not two, but many punches. This is after Saitama made his intentions to kill Boros clear by telling him he will not get away after destroying City A. Boros is an alien, but at the same time he's also perceived as a monster, and Saitama intends to kill him just like Orochi. This without a shadow of a doubt gives you an idea that this creature is built different not only in power but also in demeanor. It's worth to understand that almost all characters who faced or encountered Saitama had to either witness what he can do or had some sort of animalistic mechanism to understand how strong he really is. Even Atomic Samurai, who can sense key energy, completely look down on Saitama, believing he's not worthy of acknowledgement. But then Boros at literally first glance concluded in confidence that this man is the strongest warrior this planet has to offer, sensing that Saitama has immeasurable energy. It's actually rather insane when you think that Boros, even knowing that Saitama has no limits, was still filled with excitement and wanted to fight. Again, this is very important, since even after knowing such a fact, he still thought he was capable of defeating Saitama, which technically means that Boros believes that his overwhelming power can best an immeasurable being.
After a brief scuffle off panel, which in the anime is expanded and shown to be multiple clashes, Saitama calls Boros strong. At the very start of the fight, in his released form, Boros has already impressed Saitama like almost nobody else in the entire series. This is only accounting for his kicks and punches. Saitama doesn't know about the energy blast, nor meteoric burst, nor even that Boros can regenerate. Saitama later goes on to reaffirm his praise for Boros by calling him strong again at the end of the fight, and again to Genos. Since Boros is nowhere in earshot in this instance, any argument that Saitama may have only said these things to make Boros feel better should be tossed out right here. And even more so when you consider that upon seeing Meteoric Burst and being launched to the moon, Saitama says that Boros is almost giving him a real fight. To himself, in his own mind, this is almost a real fight. One of the craziest statements Saitama has ever given to any opponent. This is further substantiated by things said in the anime Blu-ray guidebook, like even Saitama is severely beaten, and Saikyo versus Saikyo, which means the strongest versus the strongest, when you have characters like Tatsumaki present right outside the ship in the same arc.
On top of that, there are multiple statements from the back of volume 7 of the manga to the anime episode summary claiming that Boros vs Saitama would decide the fate of the Earth. This is important because Tatsumaki and the S-class heroes are right there and ready to battle. But the overall indication is, if Saitama lost, that's it. The Earth is certainly doomed. Logically speaking, this would imply that the S-class heroes present would fail to stop Boros in an event where Saitama isn't there. Murata himself has also stated that when he drew Boros vs Saitama, he envisioned it as the heavyweight championship of the entire universe, when Tatsumaki is again right there. Furthermore, in the audiobook A Summer Festival with Tatsumaki, the Esper attacked an early version of Saitama who still had some of his hair, completely failed to affect him to the point that Tatsumaki believed he was completely beyond her psychic powers. Saitama would then go on to train further and destroy his limiter, getting much stronger than before, and Boros is still able to impress him and even rivalry suppress Saitama in his released form. This is according to the Hero Encyclopedia Guide, stating that they have rivaling abilities.
Orochi meanwhile is blatantly weaker than Psycho's Orochi, who Tatsumaki completely annihilated while critically injured, and the only reason she had any trouble was because she had to worry about other heroes on the battlefield. Now, in the past, Murata, the artist of One Punch Man, did claim that it was uncertain if Tatsumaki could defeat Orochi, and theorized that Orochi was included specifically to match and injure the Esper. However, the issue with these statements is that they are incredibly old, and plans have clearly shifted, since the events we see unfold in the manga paint a very different picture. And at the time of these statements, Murata self-admittedly did not know what one, the actual writer of the story, had in store for the Monster King. Now let's talk about Boros' strongest attack, which is the collapsing star-roaring Canon. Stated to be capable of shaving off the surface of the Earth in the manga, however, this has been pretty blatantly retconned to being a planetary attack, as not only does the anime guidebook and the Hero Encyclopedia databook suggest the same thing, but the anime that was supervised by both Murata and specifically One states that it can destroy the entire planet. For those doubting if One and Murata truly had supervision of Season 1 of the anime, in the anime Blu-ray guidebooks we get interviews with both of them, and they both reveal they had some crazy influence over the script, like Murata contemplating if he should remove the moonkick scene from Boros vs Saitama, which by the way I'm very glad he decided not to, but the point is he had enough supervision to straight up remove scenes if he wanted to. So the anime certainly was worked on and approved by the original author and the original artist.
But back to the fight, this attack forced Saitama to use a serious punch to stop it. Yes, you heard it right, forced, as the One Punch Man Compass guidebook and the official Young Jump character website both imply that Saitama actually had to use a serious punch to deflect the roaring cannon, implying that a normal punch might not have been able to stop it, which definitely fits with Saitama stating that Boros almost gave him a real fight. But what's even more crazy about this is that Boros still survived the shockwave of the serious punch. Bear in mind that he prior stated that just being in the meteoric burst form, his life is literally getting shortened. But then after, he takes multiple punches, gets blasted into pieces, forced to regenerate every part of his body, which should take a huge amount of life force, and Boros still had enough energy to destroy the entire planet.
It is also worth mentioning that to get to the planet, the roar cannon would have to go through Saitama first, and after doing that, it would still have enough power to destroy the planet. Think of this as a bullet getting fired at two walls. Getting through the first wall, Saitama would reduce the power of the attack a ton, and it would only get to the second wall, the planet, already nerfed.
The point is, Boros, having already exerted energy from fighting Saitama, still had enough fuel to destroy the entire planet and still was durable enough to survive the shockwave of the serious punch. And many even theorized that he could have potentially survived the shockwave if he hadn't spent all of his energy to fire the cannon, as we've seen Boros regenerate from worse damage before. So if he had any energy to spare for healing, he might have been fine. possibly.
I also want to draw a comparison between the anime and the manga, specifically regarding Saitama's reaction to Boros attempting to use the collapsing star ore in Canon. You can clearly see in the anime that Saitama just has this tough expression indicating that he's not really surprised. However, in the manga, as you can see in this panel, he looks on guard and surprised about the amount of energy getting released.
But overall, Boros is an insane endgame boss thrown into the very beginning of the series, and only bested by the absolute best.
So here is the context to why this fight makes sense. Orochi and Boros are both categorized as dragon or higher level threats, stated by the authors themselves, which means that these two monsters, in a broader sense, are categorized as being on the similar level. However, in each classification there are tiers. For example, Gums and Black S are both dragons, but the difference between them is extremely vast. This is in fact the same case with both of these monsters, the Dominator of the universe and the Monster King. They're in the same classification, but are worlds apart in power.
The evidence suggesting that Boros simply trumps someone like Orochi is exceedingly overwhelming. Saitama never at any point of the fight shows that he's impressed by Orochi with expressions nor with statements. In fact, what Saitama thinks about Orochi during and after the fight is the exact opposite. Even after he sees Orochi's true form, the bully is not paying him any attention whatsoever and is comfortably taking a bath. And when he defeated Orochi, Saitama treated him like a child that needed discipline. You can also substantiate that with him and Flashy Flash still searching for the Monster King even after he defeated him. He doesn't remember the monster's name and gets excited at the notion that maybe the one they're looking for is actually strong, meaning he simply didn't think Orochi was strong at all.
So how do we explain that even though Saitama wanted to kill Orochi, Orochi was still able to dodge? This actually goes to understanding Saitama as a character. There are levels to him when he's not trying. Saitama just simply doesn't know how much effort he should be putting in to destroy a monster. He clearly implies to Suiryu that he doesn't know if the monster he fought was strong or not, as all that was required was a single punch. So you can argue that Saitama here simply used the same amount of effort he used against Goketsu against Orochi. He discovered it wasn't enough, and then he decided to use more. So now that we've established that Orochi wasn't worthy of recognition by Saitama and was ended by one single punch, let's compare that to Boros. Saitama clearly thought to himself that against Boros this is almost a real fight. He tells Genos after that Boros is strong, gets impressed by his speed, regeneration, and gets surprised by Boros surviving his punches.
Now Saitama is for sure not going all out against Boros, but to what extent? Boros at the end of the day is a monster that threatens humanity. Can you prove that Saitama didn't just want to end it here, and here? The simple fact remains that Saitama ended Orochi with the very first punch he really connected, made sure to inform him that it was just a normal punch while Boros survived this many. Orochi can regenerate too, but not on the same extent as someone like Boros. He also has the Gaia Canon that requires a special condition to operate, but stopped easily by Saitama's serious squirt gun. Just compare this with the collapsing star roaring cannon that requires no complicated conditions, stopped by Saitama's serious punch.
Narratively speaking, Orochi thinks that Saitama is stronger than these guys but must be weaker than himself. Meanwhile, Boros thinks that Saitama is the strongest creature in the planet. No, in the entire universe, has no limits to his energy, and still wants to fight. Orochi's Gaia Cannon uses a portion of the Earth's energy, and when taking into account crossword scaling and calculations done by fans, can get to small planet level. Meanwhile, Boros can casually bust the entire Earth without relying on fan calculations. When pairing all of these together, you'll start to notice a pattern. Everything that Orochi does, Boros just does it better. Well, with one single exception. Orochi is a very adaptable and skilled fighter, so maybe with his abilities he could close the gap?
In most battles, Orochi's toolkit would be frightening. He can shapeshift, regenerate, fire various lasers and heat attacks, and in terms of sheer fighting skill, he is a prodigy on the level of early Garu, able to copy his Water Streamlock Smashing Fist with one single glance, which Murata himself has confirmed Orochi's Water Streamlock Smashing Fist is as good as Garu's. At the time, Garu could easily deflect blows that could badly hurt if not straight up kill him, and we see later that it is possible to use the Water Streamlock Smashing Fist to deflect energy attacks as well. So on paper, Orochi should be well equipped to handle Boros, right? Well, probably not.
In the battle between Garo and Darkshine, the hero hunter was faced with an attack so strong that he simply could not deflect it. Orochi shares similar martial arts mastery to this Garo, which tells us that if an attack is too much stronger than he is, the water stream will not be effective. And this is displayed well in his fight against Saitama, where the Baldy casually negated his techniques with raw power. And with how colossal the power and speed difference between Orochi and Boros is, there should be no way for Orochi to reliably counter Boros, or even react to him in the first place. After all, Boros is one of the very few characters who actually impress Saitama with their speed. Not to mention the Dominator has his own hacks to help him out, such as his insane regeneration and energy beams, which Orochi would be too weak to deflect or tank. Then on top of that, you remember that Orochi has a huge weakness, which is a regenerative core. If it's destroyed, it would be game over. And Boros, same as Garo, has shown the ability to sense energy, so pinpointing where the core is wouldn't be difficult.
However, there is this one very old dusty argument that can make a case for the Monster King. You see, if you believe in the audiobook's notion of Saitama being a one-shot tier stronger than his yesterday self, then that would mean that every single day after season 1, Saitama is getting absurdly stronger than Boros. And if he fought him again, he wouldn't really be impressed and wouldn't say he's strong. However, the VGS that suggests this is highly unreliable according to Saitama himself. What everyone also fails to mention is that the machine was upgraded between the first and the second session Saitama had with it, meaning it may be able to read and download more of Saitama's power the second time around, explaining why he can one-shot a version of himself that was scanned by an inferior version of the same simulation, since it would be able to comprehend more of his power now than before. But as a matter of fact, we don't even need to get into these speculations. This argument is completely shut down and contradicted by in-story narrative showing you exactly how Saitama evolved. And it's specifically when experiencing a surge of intense emotion during a competitive fight that his abilities would rise exponentially, which means Saitama simply doesn't get that much stronger than his yesterday self without having any of these conditions met.
It is an old idea that got completely crumbled by in-story nuances and new narratives, and just think about it, if Saitama truly grows a one-shot tier stronger each and every single day, then that would mean Orochi clashing for even a single moment with a serious squirt gun would have to mean he defeats, or at the very least gives a good fight to Season 1 Saitama, just due to how much stronger Saitama would be in the Orochi fight than in Season 1. And obviously this would never happen. Heck, if Boros arrived during the House of Evolution days, he would have absolutely decimated Saitama and wouldn't have even considered him a challenge. Do you think that that could actually happen in the story? Obviously not. There are also new metas you can derive from the webcomic, but we won't be mentioning it here, as maybe the manga is going to change some aspects of it. But if they keep the story and the statements the way they are, then there would be yet another way to prove without a doubt that Boros is much stronger than Orochi. All in all, it seems that the Dominator of the universe is definitely far superior to a mere king of monsters, and I would argue that he wouldn't even need Meteoric Burst to end the fight extremely quickly. Whether it's through direct comparisons by Saitama, by comparing them to other characters like Tatsumaki, or even just by looking at how much they can destroy, it is abundantly clear that Boros would wipe Orochi off the face of the planet. Special thanks to Yacine for joining me in this video, as well as helping out with the thumbnail. Very supportive guy who I've already learned a lot from and has been an absolute pleasure to work with. Make sure to check him out and let us know if you'd like us to tag team more topics in the future. But with nothing else to say, I wish you a great rest of your day. Goodbye.